What happens when the person everyone throws away becomes the only one who matters? In the brutal Stonecrest pack, the rejected Omega, Emma is invisible. She's less than dust. But one stormy afternoon, when a small, bleeding wolf pup is left to die on the pack square, ignored by the strong and mocked by the cruel, Emma does the one thing she was forbidden to do. She shows compassion. She carries the pup home, unaware that a powerful stranger, the Alpha King himself, is hidden in the shadows, watching her every move. She thought she was saving a dying animal. She had no idea she was holding the key to the entire Dominion. The rain fell in cold, spiteful sheets over the Stonecrest pack. It was a miserable day, matching the miserable existence of Emma. Emma was an Omega. In the Stonecrest hierarchy, that meant she was a ghost. She was the last to eat, the first to be blamed, and the one required to make herself invisible when any ranked wolf, which was everyone, walked by. She was 20 years old and hadn't made eye contact with her alpha in 3 years. Her rejection wasn't just systemic, it was personal. Alpha Silas, a brute of a man who ruled with a fist of iron, despised her. Her parents had been weak, succumbing to a sickness that Silas deemed a failure of will, and he had transferred that scorn to her. She was huddled near the back wall of the communal hall, ostensibly cleaning, but really just trying to stay out of the way of the afternoon patrol returning from the border. They were loud, arrogant, and soaked. "Nothing but mud and rogues," grumbled Declan, the beta. "And this," sneered Bianca, Alpha Silas's daughter. She kicked something with her boot. Emma flinched, expecting it to be her, but when she dared to look, she saw what Bianca had kicked at. It was a pup. It wasn't a Stonecrest pup. It was a stranger, skeletal and small, its fur matted with mud and dark, sticky blood. It must have crawled onto the square from the woods, desperate. It let out a weak, high-pitched keen that was barely audible over the storm. "Ugh, disgusting," Bianca said, wiping her boot on the stone path. "Silas, get someone to clear this vermin away." Alpha Silas emerged from the hall, his massive frame blocking the light. He looked down at the whimpering creature. "It's dying. Don't waste the effort. The storm will take it." "It's a bad omen," another warrior muttered. "A strange pup dying on the square." "It's weak," Silas boomed, his voice a hammer. "Weakness is the only bad omen. Leave it. Let the crows have it. A good lesson for our own pups on the cost of failure." The patrol moved on, laughing and shoving each other toward the warmth of the hall, their heavy boots splashing mud just inches from the pup's head. The square emptied. The pack members, following their alpha's decree, turned their backs. They saw weakness, an inconvenience. Emma watched from the shadows of the doorway. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a painful, frantic bird in a cage. Don't look. Don't see. To see is to care. To care is to be punished. The pup tried to lift its head. It was shivering violently, its small body convulsing. It looked at the empty square, at the closed doors, and let out one last, heartbreaking cry. Something in Emma snapped. It wasn't a grand decision. It was an instinct, raw and painful. She knew what it felt like to be cold, to be ignored, to be left to die. Her hands trembled. She looked left and right. The square was empty, save for one figure. Far across the square, beneath the overhang of the blacksmith's forge, stood a man. He was a stranger, tall and broad, wrapped in a heavy dark cloak that obscured his features. He was perfectly still, watching. Not the pup. He was watching her. A shiver of pure terror went down her spine. A lone wolf. Dangerous. But the pup whimpered again, a sound of utter defeat. "I am already a ghost," she thought. "What more can they do to me?" She darted out from the doorway, her thin tunic instantly soaked. The rain was ice cold, stinging her skin. She fell to her knees in the mud beside the pup. It flinched, its eyes wide with terror. "Shh, shh, it's okay," she whispered, her voice raw. I'm not them." Ignoring the blood and filth, Emma gently scooped the small creature into her arms. It was shockingly light, all matted fur and sharp bones. It was so cold it felt like a piece of ice. She pressed it against her chest, trying to shield it with her own meager body heat, and ran. She didn't run toward the pack dorms. She ran toward the woods, to the tiny, dilapidated cabin on the far edge of the territory that had once belonged to her parents, the place she now called home. She didn't look back. If she had, she would have seen the cloaked stranger step out from the shadows. He watched her disappear into the tree line, his face, which had been hard as granite, now etched with a profound, consuming intrigue. "Kalen," a voice said, so low it was barely a breath. A second man, his beta, materialized from the alley beside the forge. "Was that?" "No." The cloaked man, Alpha King Kalen, replied, his voice a deep rumble. "My nephew is not that small." He paused, his gaze fixed on the spot where Emma had knelt. "But that girl, in a pack of cowardly wolves, we just found a lion." Emma's cabin was barely more than a shed, but it was hers. The wind whistled through the cracks in the old wood, but a small hearth in the corner provided a fragile warmth. She barred the door, a flimsy piece of wood that wouldn't stop a determined warrior, but it was all she had. Okay. Let's see you," she murmured, laying the pup on a pile of old blankets near the fire. Now, in the light, she saw how bad it was. Its left hind leg was a mangled mess, caught in the rusted metal teeth of a snare trap that was still attached, dragging a heavy chain. The steel was embedded deep in the muscle. Worse, he was burning with fever. "Oh, spirits," she breathed, her stomach turning. "What did they do to you?" She worked quickly, her fear replaced by a desperate focus. She was an Omega, but she wasn't useless. Her mother had been a healer, and she had passed on her knowledge of herbs before she died. Emma had a small, hidden garden of them behind the cabin. She fetched her supplies, a sharp knife, boiled water, and a pungent paste of willow bark and comfrey root. "This is going to hurt," she whispered to the pup. "I am so sorry. But you have to be brave." The pup whimpered, but didn't fight as she began the agonizing work of cutting the snare from its flesh. It was a brutal, bloody process. Emma's hands were slick with blood, tears of sympathy and rage streaming down her face. "Who would do this?" she hissed, finally prying the last metal tooth from the wound. "Who would trap a pup?" She cleaned the wound, stitched it with a fine needle and thread she normally used for mending her tunic, and applied a thick poultice before bandaging it tightly with strips of clean linen. The pup was shivering, its breathing shallow. It was too weak to even lift its head. She sat back on her heels, exhausted and terrified. She had just broken a direct decree from her alpha. If Silas found out, she wouldn't just be beaten. She'd be exiled. A lone Omega, exiled during a storm. It was a death sentence. "We just have to be quiet," she told the pup, who was watching her with intelligent, unnervingly aware eyes. They were a strange color, not the usual brown or gray of a wolf, but a deep, piercing amber. "We'll get you strong, and then you have to run, far away from here." She named him Leo. It meant lion. It felt right for his brave, amber eyes. For 2 days, Emma lived on a knife's edge. She snuck out only to get water, foraging for mushrooms and roots for herself, and mashing up the small portion of bread and stew she was allotted from the pack kitchen for Leo. He refused it. He would only drink water, and even that was a struggle. His fever wasn't breaking. The wound was infected. "Please," she begged the small creature on the third night, the storm still raging. "Please don't die. I don't know what else to do." Leo let out a weak cough, and his eyes started to glass over. Emma's hope began to crumble. She had defied her alpha, risked her life, for nothing. She was just a weak Omega after all. She couldn't even save one small life. That's when the knock came. It wasn't a tentative tap. It was a solid, authoritative thud on her door. Emma froze. Her blood turned to ice. He knows. Silas is here. Leo, sensing her panic, tried to growl, but it came out as a pathetic wheeze. "Emma of Stone Crest," a deep voice called. It wasn't Silas. This voice was calmer, richer, and held an authority that vibrated through the very wood of the door. It was the stranger from the square. "Go away," she cried, her voice trembling. "I have nothing." "I am not here to take anything," the man said. "I am here to help him." "How could he know? I saw you in the square. I am a traveler. My name is Kale, and I have medicine." Emma was trapped. She looked at Leo, who was breathing in short, shallow gasps. He wouldn't last another hour. She was a dead wolf either way. If Silas found her, she was dead. If this stranger was a rogue, he'd kill her and the pup. But if he was telling the truth... She slid the bar back. The door opened, and the man from the square filled the entire frame. He was massive, larger even than Alpha Silas, but he moved with a fluid grace. He lowered the hood of his cloak. Emma's breath caught. He was, without question, the most powerful man she had ever seen. His face was stark and handsome, carved from granite, with a short-cropped dark beard. But it was his eyes that held her. They were the exact same, impossible shade of deep, piercing amber as the pup's. He wasn't looking at her. His gaze was locked on the small, dying form by the fire. "So it is you," Kyle murmured, a world of pain and relief in his voice. He swept into the cabin, bringing the cold air and the scent of pine and ozone. He knelt by the pup, his large, calloused hand surprisingly gentle as he touched Leo's head. "He's burning," Emma whispered, terrified. "The wound is infected. My herbs aren't working." "They wouldn't," Kyle said, his focus absolute. He unwrapped a leather roll from his pack. It was filled with surgical-grade instruments, silver vials, and small, labeled pouches. He is not a common wolf. He needs silver-spun sutures and an infusion of ghost maple extract. Your Omega herbs are holding back the tide, but he's of alpha blood. The infection fights differently. Emma watched, stunned, as this stranger worked with the skill of a master physician. He cleaned the wound again, his movements precise and economical. He produced a small syringe and injected a clear liquid from one of the vials into the pup's scruff. "Who are you?" Emma finally asked. Kyle didn't look up. "I am someone who has been searching for him for a very long time." He tied off the new bandage. "He was taken, ambushed on the King's Road. We thought he was dead." "Taken? He's just a pup." Kyle's eyes finally met hers. The intensity in them was like a physical blow. "He is not just a pup. And you saved him when all your pack's strongest warriors turned their backs." Leo, who had been unconscious, suddenly stirred. The new medicine was working with impossible speed. He whined, and Kyle picked him up, cradling the small wolf against his massive chest. Leo nuzzled into his cloak, a sound that was half purr, half sigh. "Thank you," Kyle said, his voice thick. "You have done me a service I can never truly repay." I just couldn't leave him," Emma said, feeling small. A sudden, violent crash echoed from outside. The door flew off its hinges, splintering into a dozen pieces. Alpha Silas stood in the doorway, flanked by Bianca and Declan. They were soaked, their faces twisted in rage. "I knew it," Silas snarled, his eyes fixing on Emma. "Hiding, hoarding, and with a man." Bianca's eyes, sharp and cruel, landed on the pup in Kyle's arms. "And the vermin! You defied your alpha! You brought this filth into our territory!" "She's a traitor!" Declan yelled. "Exile her, or kill her now!" Silas took a step into the cabin, his claws elongating. "You are finished, Omega. You and your worthless mutt." Emma shrank back, a scream lodging in her throat. But Kyle did not move. He simply stood up to his full height, which was a good head taller than Silas. He shielded Emma and the pup with his body. "You will not touch her," Kyle said. His voice had changed. It was no longer the calm traveler. It was a low, seismic rumble. "And who are you to tell me?" Silas spat, amused. "Her rogue mate. You both die." Silas lunged. He didn't get 2 feet. Kyle moved faster than Emma's eyes could follow. He didn't shift. He didn't need to. He caught Silas by the throat with one hand, lifted him clean off the floor, and slammed him against the cabin wall. The entire structure shook. Bianca and Declan froze, their arrogance vanishing, replaced by pure, primal terror. Kyle's eyes were no longer just amber. They were glowing with a white-hot, furious power. The Alpha's command radiated off him in waves so potent it forced Emma, Declan, and Bianca to their knees. Silas choked, his feet dangling, claws scraping uselessly at Kyle's wrist. "You speak of worth," Kyle growled, his voice a terrifying echo of itself. "You, who leads a pack that abandons the young and torments the compassionate. You are not an alpha. You are a coward." He threw Silas across the room, where he crumpled into a heap by the hearth, gasping. Kyle turned his burning gaze on Bianca. "Leave. Tell your pack to assemble in the great hall. Now." Bianca, white-faced and trembling, scrambled to her feet and fled into the rain. Declan, after a moment's hesitation, grabbed his stunned alpha by the arm and dragged him out, disappearing into the storm. Emma was left alone with the stranger, shaking on the floor. The cabin was destroyed. "Who? What are you?" she whispered. Kyle's furious aura receded. He turned to her, his expression softening as he looked at her terrified face. He still held the pup, who was now awake and watching Emma calmly. "My name," he said, "is Kalen Valerius. I am the Alpha King of the Black Moon Dominion. And the pup you saved," he added, his voice heavy with revelation, "is not Leo. He is Lycus, my nephew. He is the sole heir to the Northern Fang. And you, Emma, just saved the royal bloodline." Emma's world tilted. The Alpha King. The Alpha King. He wasn't a person. He was a legend, a myth who lived in an obsidian citadel 1,000 miles away, ruling all the packs with an iron will. And he was standing in her ruined cabin. My king," she stammered, trying to bow from her knees, her mind reeling. "Get up, Emma," Kalen said, his voice firm but not unkind. He offered her a hand. His grip was warm and steady, and a jolt, like a low current of electricity, passed through her at the contact. She snatched her hand back as if burned. "He's the heir," she whispered, looking at Lycus. The pup was indeed watching her with an intelligence that was distinctly human. "He is," Kalen said grimly. "My brother's only son. We were ambushed 6 weeks ago on a diplomatic mission. My former beta, Malachor, betrayed us. He wanted the line broken to claim the throne for himself. My brother and his mate were killed. We thought Lycus died in the fire." He looked at the pup. He must have shifted, escaped into the woods. He's only 6 years old. He's been alone, starving, for weeks. The trap. Kalen's jaw tightened. Malakor's men must have set it. They're still hunting him. And you? Emma asked. You were in the square. I have been tracking Malakor's men across the territories, disguised as a lone wolf. I followed their scent to Stonecrest, assuming they were hiding here. I was watching your Alpha, Silas, to see if he was in league with the traitor. Kaelin's eyes met hers. I did not expect to find my nephew left to die in the mud, and I did not expect to find you. A new silence stretched between them, heavier than the one before. The king was looking at her, really looking at her, and Emma felt exposed in a way she never had before. She was painfully aware of her torn tunic, the mud on her face, her status as an Omega. They'll be waiting, Kaelin said, breaking the spell. Silas has failed his pack. He has failed his king, and he has failed you. Failed me? Emma shook her head. My king, I am nobody. I'm just an Omega. The look Kaelin gave her was sharp. Do not ever say that again. You were the only wolf in this entire pack who showed an ounce of loyalty, compassion, or strength. Your rank is not your worth. Your actions are. He adjusted Lycus in his arms. Now come. This reckoning is long overdue. Come, with you, to the great hall. Emma panicked. They'll look at me. I can't. You can, Kaelin said, his voice absolute. You will stand beside me. He pulled his heavy cloak from his shoulders, the one that still smelled of pine and ozone, and wrapped it around her. It was huge, enveloping her in warmth and a sense of impossible safety. You are under the king's protection. Let them look. He didn't wait for her to argue. He walked out of the ruined cabin. Emma, clutching the king's cloak, had no choice but to follow. The walk to the great hall was a blur. The rain had stopped. The entire Stonecrest pack was assembled on the square, their faces a mixture of confusion, fear, and curiosity. They had been summoned by a panicked Bianca, who was now standing near the front, her face pale. Alpha Silas was there, his tunic torn, a livid bruise forming on his throat. He looked murderous. When the pack saw Kaelin emerge from the woods, a murmur went through the crowd. They saw a powerful stranger. But when they saw Emma, the rejected Omega, walking behind him, wrapped in his cloak, the murmuring turned to shocked silence. Silas saw her. You! He roared, lunging forward. You brought this rogue here! You— Kneel! Kaelin said. He didn't shout. He didn't roar. He spoke the one word, and the sheer, unadulterated power of the Alpha King washed over the square. Every wolf, every warrior, every elder, every mother, even Silas, was forced to their knees. Their bodies obeyed before their minds could even process the command. Silas fought it, his muscles straining, a strangled cry in his throat, but the king's will was absolute. He collapsed to the ground, bowing to a force he couldn't comprehend. Only Emma, sheltered by the king's proximity and his cloak, was left standing. She stood beside him, trembling, as 200 wolves knelt before them. Kaelin walked to the center of the square, Lycus still held securely against his chest. I am Kaelin Valerius, Alpha King of the Black Moon Dominion, he announced. The collective gasp was audible. I came to your pack borders hunting a traitor. I came looking for weakness, for corruption. I found it. His gaze swept over the kneeling pack. I watched as a royal pup, an heir to the bloodline, lay bleeding and dying in your square. Horror rippled through the crowd. I watched your warriors mock him, he continued, his voice growing colder. I watched your Alpha, he pointed at Silas, call him vermin and weakness, and leave him for the crows. You all turned your backs. He paused, letting the weight of their failure settle on them. All but one. Kaelin turned and beckoned Emma forward. She felt faint, but his gaze held her, kept her upright. She walked to his side, the eyes of her entire pack on her. This Omega, this nobody, who you have scorned and rejected. She, alone, had the courage of a true wolf. She defied her alpha to do what was right. She saved the life of your future. He held up Lycus. The pup, though weak, lifted his head, and his amber eyes shone in the clearing gloom. This is Lycus of the Northern Fang. Your pack condemned him. Your Omega saved him. Cailan looked down at Silas, his face a mask of cold fury. Silas of Stonecrest, you are charged with dereliction of duty, endangerment of the royal bloodline, and fostering a pack of cowards. Your judgment is at hand. The square was so quiet that the drip of water from the eaves sounded like drum beats. Silas, still forced to his knees, was shaking with a mixture of rage and terror. "My king!" Silas managed, his voice a gravelly choke. I did not know. How could I know? It looked like a rogue pup, diseased." "You judge by sight, then?" Cailan's voice was dangerously soft. "You do not use scent? You do not use instinct? You smelled no alpha blood? You sensed no royal lineage? Or did you simply not care because he was small and injured?" Silas had no answer. "And you," Cailan said, turning his gaze to Bianca. She flinched as if he had struck her. "You kicked at him. You called him filth." "He was!" Bianca cried, her voice rising in a desperate shriek. "He was filthy. It was her. She's the traitor. She must have brought him. She's working with the rogue Malachor. She's a spy." It was a desperate, venomous lie, and for a heart-stopping second, the pack wavered. They looked at Emma, their long-held suspicion of her flaring up. Emma's heart stopped. She had no defense against such a lie. "She is no spy," Cailan said, his voice slicing through the tension. He took a step closer to Emma, placing his free hand on her shoulder. The warmth seeped through the cloak, steadying her. "She is the only wolf here I trust." He looked back at Bianca. "You lie to your king to cover your own cruelty. That is your second offense." Cailan turned to the crowd. "I will have the truth. Declan, beta of this pack. You were there. What did your alpha say?" Declan, kneeling, was white as a sheet. He looked at Silas, then at the king. He was trapped. He said he was weak, my king. He said to leave him, as a lesson." "And you agreed?" I follow my alpha," Declan whispered. "You follow him into dishonor," Cailan stated. "Your loyalty is misplaced. It is to your dominion, first, to the law. And the first law is that the young are protected." Cailan began to pace, his presence dominating the square. "This pack is rotten. It stinks of arrogance and weakness masquerading as strength. You have forgotten what it means to be a pack. You have forgotten compassion. You have forgotten honor." He stopped in front of Emma. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. The air around them grew thick, charged with an energy Emma didn't understand. It was the same current she'd felt when he touched her hand, but magnified 1,000 times. "My king," she whispered, her knees feeling weak. Cailan's amber eyes bored into hers. He saw her fear, her confusion, but he also saw the iron spine beneath it. He saw the girl who had run into the rain for a dying creature. "For weeks," he said, his voice now quieter, meant only for her, though the pack strained to hear. "I have been hunting my enemy. I have been consumed by vengeance and fear for my nephew. I came here expecting to find only darkness." He gently brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. His touch was electric. And in the darkest moment, when my own blood was about to be extinguished by the cruelty of the world, a light appeared. Emma's breath hitched. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't look away. "The fates are cruel," Kaelin murmured, "but they are not without a sense of poetry." He turned back to the crowd, his voice ringing out once more. "You see before you a rejected Omega. You see the lowest of the low." He took Emma's hand and pulled her to his side, lacing his fingers with hers. Her hand was small and trembled in his, but he held it fast. "I see my salvation," he declared. "I see the other half of my soul." A collective, strangled gasp erupted from the pack. No one moved. They didn't understand. Silas's head snapped up. What did you say?" Kaelin looked down at Emma, his gaze softening with a profound emotion she had never seen before. Awe. I did not recognize it at first. The bond was faint, masked by my grief and my rage. But when I saw you risk your life for him, when I saw your soul, it clicked into place. He raised their joined hands. "Emma of Stonecrest," he boomed, his voice resonating with a power that shook the very stones. "You, who were rejected by the weak, have been chosen by the strong." He went down on one knee. The Alpha King knelt. Before an Omega. Before her. The pack stared in stunned, disbelieving horror. This was impossible. This broke every law of their world. "Emma," Kaelin said, his amber eyes locked on hers, the world shrinking until it was only the two of them. "The moon goddess has marked you. You are my fated mate. You are my Luna, and you will be my queen." The world went white at the edges. Emma's legs gave out. Kaelin, anticipating it, rose in a fluid motion, catching her, his arm a steel band around her waist, holding her up. "Queen?" she breathed, the word a puff of air. No, you're mistaken. Look at me. I'm an Omega. I can't. I'm nothing. You are everything," he countered, his voice fierce, his grip possessive. "You are the balance to my strength. You are the heart this dominion has been missing. The goddess does not make mistakes. No, it was a scream. Bianca." She staggered to her feet, her face a mask of utter disbelief and jealous rage. The king's command was broken by the sheer shock of it. "It's a lie, a trick. She's enchanted you, a worthless, filthy Omega, a queen. It's blasphemy." Bianca, in her fury, did the unthinkable. She lunged, not at Kaelin, but at Emma, her claws extended. "I'll kill her! I'll kill the witch!" Emma saw the flash of claws and instinctively flinched, but Kaelin had already moved. He didn't shove Bianca. He didn't strike her. He simply released his full, unrestrained aura. It was not the controlled command from before. This was the raw, primal power of an Alpha King protecting his mate. It was a physical force, a crushing, suffocating wave of dominance and killing intent that brought every wolf, including Bianca, crashing to the ground. They weren't just kneeling. They were prostrate, flattened, unable to breathe, their wolves whimpering in their minds. Bianca choked, her claws scraping the mud inches from Emma's feet. "You," Kaelin's voice was a low, terrifying vibration, "will never threaten my Luna again. You will not speak to her. You will not look at her. You are fortunate she is compassionate, because I am not." He reined in his power, just enough for them to breathe. Emma was gasping, leaning heavily against him. He had shielded her from the worst of it, but even the edges of his rage were terrifying. "My king, please," Emma whispered, tugging on his arm. Don't hurt them." Kaelin looked down at her, his eyes still burning. "They would have let you be torn apart." "They're afraid," she said, her voice shaking. "They were taught to be cruel. Please, Kaelin." His expression hardened, but the killing intent subsided. He looked at the pack. "Your future queen," he said, his voice clipped. has pleaded for your lives. You should thank her." He then looked at Silas, who was trying to push himself up, his face purple with effort and humiliation. "Silas," Cailan said, "your reign is over. You are stripped of your alpha status." "You can't," Silas roared, finding his voice. "This is my pack." "It was never your pack," Cailan countered. "It was a pack on loan from the Dominion, and you have failed to pay your taxes in loyalty. You are exiled. You will leave these lands before the moon rises. If you are found on Stonecrest territory, or any territory under my rule, you will be hunted as a rogue and executed." Silas stared, his world crumbling. "Declan!" Cailan snapped. The beta flinched. "You followed a corrupt alpha. You have no honor. You are stripped of your beta rank. You will serve the pack as an omega, effective immediately. You will learn the humility and strength that Emma has lived. Perhaps one day you will earn a rank again." Declan collapsed, his face ashen. "And you, Bianca," Cailan said, his voice laced with ice. "You, who despise the weak. You, who attacked your future queen. You will receive the same fate. You are Omega. You will take Emma's chores. You will clean the kennels, you will mend the tunics, and you will eat last, and you will learn what it means to be invisible." Bianca let out a low, animalistic wail of despair. The pack was silent, terrified. Their entire world had been dismantled in less than 10 minutes. Cailan turned to the crowd. "Your leadership has failed you. I will appoint a new alpha. Someone who understands that strength is not just about claws and teeth." His eyes scanned the crowd, past the trembling warriors, past the cowering elders. He pointed to a man in the back, a mid-level warrior named Marcus. He was broad and quiet, and Emma remembered him as one of the few who had never actively mocked her. He had simply looked away, his face tight with shame. "Marcus," Cailan commanded. Marcus walked forward, his head bowed. "My king! You were at the square. You saw the pup. You did nothing." Marcus winced. "I did not, my king. I failed. I was a coward. I feared my alpha." "You were," Cailan agreed. "But you did not mock. And you speak the truth now, when it is hard. Do you accept your failure?" "I do, my king." "Good. Then you can learn from it." Cailan's voice rang out. "Marcus is your new alpha. He will answer directly to me. He will rebuild this pack, not on the principle of power, but on the principle of protection. You will protect your young. You will honor your compassionate. You will become a pack worthy of the name. Is that understood?" "Yes, my king," Marcus said, his voice shaking but firm. "Yes, my king," the pack echoed, their voices a wave of terrified relief. The reckoning was over. Cailan turned to Emma. The hard lines of the king softened as he looked at her. "Emma," he said gently, "I have a choice for you. You are Luna of the Stonecrest pack by right. You can stay here, rule beside Marcus as his alpha female, and help him rebuild. You would be safe, and you would be honored." Emma looked at the faces of her pack. She saw Bianca's hateful glare, Declan's shame, and the dazed fear of the others. This was her home, but it had never been her home. "Or," Cailan said, his voice dropping, his hand finding hers again, "you can come with me, to the Black Moon Citadel. You can be my Luna, my mate, my queen, and we will rule the entire Dominion, together." Emma looked at the broken pack. Then she looked up at Cailan, the powerful king who had knelt for her. She looked at Lycus, the pup who had started it all, now sleeping safely in the king's arm. She knew what her life was here, mending the past. She wanted to know what her life was with him, building the future. I was an Omega," she said, her voice finding a new, quiet strength. "I know nothing of being a queen. I know nothing of having a heart," Kaelin replied, his voice a raw admission. "We will learn together." She squeezed his hand. "I will come with you." The journey to the Black Moon Citadel was a revelation. They travelled with Kaelin's royal guard, the two men who had been with him in the square, his beta, Grayson, and his gamma, Ronan, who had appeared from the woods as soon as the pack had been settled. They travelled fast, Kaelin's large black wolf setting a pace that was grueling, but Emma found her own wolf, small, silver, and suppressed for her entire life, revelled in the run. Kaelin never left her side. He was protective, possessive, and surprisingly tender. He taught her how to hunt on the run. He shared his food with her. At night, he curled his massive wolf form around hers, shielding her from the wind, and for the first time in her life, Emma slept without fear. Lycus, who was healing with astonishing speed, rode on Grayson's back, but spent his evenings pestering Emma, tumbling over her paws and chewing on her ears. A bond had been forged in the mud and rain, and he clearly adored her. But the journey was not without its shadows. One night, as they sat by the fire, Emma touched the faint, silvery scars on her arms, reminders of her life in Stonecrest. Kaelin, sitting beside her, saw the motion. He gently caught her hand, turning her arm over to look at the marks under the firelight. His face darkened. "Silas," he stated. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded, pulling her hand away. "Omegas heal slowly without pack bonds. It was normal." "It was not," Kaelin said, his voice a low growl. "It was monstrous." He looked into the fire, his profile hard. "I should have killed him." "No," Emma said, touching his arm. He was rigid with anger. "Kaelin, you gave him exile. That was justice. Killing him would have been revenge." He turned to look at her, his amber eyes searching her face. "How can you have such mercy for those who gave you none?" "Because I know what it feels like to have no one," she said simply. "I don't want to be the one who causes that pain. Not even to him." Kaelin stared at her, and she saw a deep, profound vulnerability in the king's eyes. He pulled her against his side, his arm wrapping around her like a shield. "They starved you. They beat you. They tried to break you. And instead, they forged you into the strongest wolf I have ever known. They are fools, Emma. They threw away a diamond because they were too blind to see it shine." When they finally arrived at the Black Moon Citadel, Emma understood true power. It wasn't a large hall of wood and stone like Stonecrest. It was a city, carved from the heart of a mountain, all black obsidian and gleaming silver, lit by glowing moonstones. It was magnificent and terrifying, and the court was worse. If Stonecrest was a brutal, straightforward pack, the citadel was a sea of velvet-gloved knives. The alphas of the great northern and southern packs, dukes, duchesses, and ancient lords, were assembled to welcome their king, and to see the Omega he had brought home. They were polite. Their bows were deep, but their eyes were cold. They saw her thin frame, her simple clothes, her Omega scent. They saw a weakness, a pet, not a queen. A formidable woman, Duchess Seraphina, who ruled the Silvercrouch pack and was known for her sharp mind, approached them. "My king, a joyous return, and you have found your nephew. The goddess is good." "She is, Duchess," Kaelin said, his hand firmly on the small of Emma's back. Seraphina's eyes flicked to Emma. "And this is the one." It wasn't a question. An Omega. "How novel." "This is Emma," Kaelin said, his voice daring her to challenge him. "My fated Luna. Your queen." "Of course," Seraphina smiled, a thin, painted-on expression. "We are all so eager to learn from her. Her Unique perspective. The dismissal was clear. Emma was a curiosity, not a ruler. For the first few weeks, Emma felt like she was drowning. The court protocols were stifling. The other high-ranking females were dismissive, and the sheer responsibility was crushing. She was the rejected Omega all over again, just in a much bigger, colder hall. She confessed her fears to Kaelin one night in his chambers, which were now their chambers. "They hate me, Kaelin. They're waiting for me to fail. I don't know how to be this queen. I don't know how to be strong like them." Kaelin took her face in his hands. "Stop trying to be like them. I did not choose you because you were another Seraphina. I chose you because you are you." He kissed her forehead. "You have a strength they cannot comprehend. Stop trying to be an alpha. Rule as you are." "As an Omega?" she asked, the word still tasting like shame. "Yes," he said, his voice full of conviction. "Rule with your heart. Rule with your compassion. That is what I have been missing. It is what this dominion has been missing. Stop fighting who you are, Emma, and start using it." Kaelin's words became her new creed. Rule as you are. Stop trying to be an alpha. For her entire life, Omega had meant weak, invisible, unwanted. She had been so focused on the shame of her rank that she never saw its power. An alpha's power was a roar, a physical force that made others raise their shields and prepare for a fight. An Omega's power, she now realized, was silence. It was observation. It was invisibility. At Stonecrest, she had seen everything, because no one ever thought to hide their actions from a ghost. She would stop trying to be the Alpha Queen the court expected, and become the Omega Queen they would never see coming. She began, not in the War Council, but in the Citadel's infirmary. It was run by the severe Dr. Oris Thorne, a high-ranking physician who prized his academic texts over all else. He was visibly annoyed by her presence. "My Luna," he said, his bow stiff. "This is a place of science. Perhaps the gardens would be more restful?" Emma ignored him, pointing to a young warrior, shivering with a violent fever, his legs swollen and streaked with red. "What's wrong with him?" "Rogue blade poison," Dr. Thorne said flatly. "The standard silverweave antidote is not working. He will be dead by morning." Emma stepped closer, ignoring the doctor's offended expression. She leaned down and did what he, in all his wisdom, had not. She smelled the wound. It didn't have the sharp, coppery tang of venom. It smelled deep, stagnant and green. "It's not poison," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "It's swamp rot. The blade was old, and your silverweave antidote is aggravating it, feeding the infection." Dr. Thorne scoffed. "Luna, with all due respect, swamp rot is a peasant superstition. I will not." "He is dying your way, Doctor." Emma cut him off, her gaze level and cold. "You have already failed him. Now you will let him live mine." It was not an alpha's command, but a simple, unassailable fact. Stunned by her sudden authority, Thorne stepped aside. Emma worked all night, using the peasant remedies her mother had taught her. She made a poultice of comfrey root and crushed riverstone, forcing a tea of willow bark sap down the warrior's throat. By dawn, the fever had broken. The warrior was sleeping peacefully. Dr. Thorne, humbled and astounded, became her first and most devoted ally. Emma didn't stop. She went to the kitchens, not as a queen, but as a worker, kneading dough alongside the other Omegas. She went to the orphanages, filled with pups from Kaelin's wars, and sat on the floor, listening to them. The court, led by the haughty Duchess Seraphina, was amused. "The Omega Queen is playing with the servants and the pups," Seraphina was heard to say. "How quaint. It keeps her busy. But the Omegas, The healers, the servants, and the orphans, they weren't amused. They saw a Luna who knew their names, who understood their work, and who honored their invisible status. Their fear turned to a fierce, silent loyalty. They were the invisible army of the Citadel, and Emma was their commander. They started to listen, and they started to talk to their queen. 6 months later, the traitor, Malachor, was captured and dragged in chains before the throne. "You caught me, king," he sneered, bloody but unbroken, "but you'll never find my spies. Your court is rotten. You've gone soft, Kaelin, mated to this." He spat the word at Emma. "A weak little Omega. You'll be picking my allies out of your bedsheets for years." Kaelin merely looked at Emma and nodded once. Emma stood. The great hall went utterly silent. "You are an alpha, Malachor," she said, her voice not loud, but cutting through the silence. "You look for rivals and warriors. You never thought to look at the servants." Malachor's smile faltered. "Your spy, Lord Matthias," Emma continued, "was overheard in the stables, promising your agent the Western Territories. He was overheard by an Omega mending his cloak. He never even saw her." Lord Matthias in the crowd went white. "And you, Duchess Seraphina," Emma said, turning to the woman. Seraphina's practiced smile froze. "You plotted in the infirmary, whispering of how Kaelin's death would clear the throne for your son. You forgot about the healer you dismissed, the one I saved. He has a very good memory." Emma looked back at the stunned Malachor. "My weakness was my weapon. My Omegas, the ones you never noticed, see everything. Your network is broken." As Kaelin gave the signal, and the royal guard seized the shocked, snarling traitors, Malachor stared at Emma with dawning horror. He hadn't been beaten by an army. He'd been dismantled by a network of healers, servants, and orphans. That night, Emma stood on the balcony, wrapped in Kaelin's arms as he nuzzled her hair. "You are terrifying, my queen," he murmured. "I just listened," she whispered. "They all feared my power," Kaelin said, turning her to face him, his amber eyes full of awe. "They should have feared your heart." Emma leaned against his chest, looking out at the kingdom she had saved. She was no longer a ghost. She was the Omega Queen, and she was just getting started. And so, the rejected Omega, Emma, proved that true strength isn't about the power you wield, but about the compassion you show when no one is looking. She and Kaelin ruled for a lifetime, a perfect balance of heart and might, forever changing what it meant to be strong. What did you think of Emma's story? Did her journey from rejected to revered resonate with you? The biggest twists often come from the quietest places. If you loved this story of karmic justice and unexpected love, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with someone else who needs a good story, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more dramatic storytelling, just like this. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an update, and let me know in the comments below, what was your favorite part of Emma's and Kaelin's story? Until next